Welcome, everyone. Happy to be here with you. And I invite you to set aside all distractions, turn off your cell phone for this time of deepening practice. You are invited each time we do this to write in the chat box where you're coming from today. Just gives us even more of a sense of who's here and more of a sense of togetherness. So anyone who's willing to share where you're coming from. And as you arrive, just really appreciating yourself for showing up, for allowing time for deepening practice. And I'm just going to take a peek in the chat box. I see people here from Sebastopol in California, San Diego, San Francisco, Houston, Vancouver Island, New Jersey, Michigan, Indiana, another from San Diego, British Columbia, and I see some familiar names. Our format today will be that I'll guide us in just a moment in a centering and meditation. And then we will open up the space for anyone and everyone to ask your questions, to enter inquiry together. Just following our curiosity and acknowledging that we wake up not in isolation, but together as a collective. And that means that each and every one of your personal questions is of service to the whole. Okay? So please find a comfortable position. Resting your hands in your lap, acknowledging with openness and beginner's mind what is the state of your physical body today. You can rest your eyes, either closed or open gently, in a soft, receptive gaze. And before we drop in, let's just invoke the simplest practice in the entire world, and that is the one breath meditation. Where you are, just taking in one conscious breath, feeling the air as it enters you, fills you, and leaves you. And as every moment is new, doing that again. As we begin to settle into meditation today, I want to emphasize that what we're doing is remembering the already awakened state. Remembering the wholeness that is innate, that already is here. So begin to pay attention to the already existing quiet. Begin to be aware of your resting body, supported by the surface beneath you. Please turn all of your attention to sound. Allowing your body to be open to receiving sound. You can let your breath be an anchor as we begin to settle in. And just notice, if you will, the effortlessness of just listening. If you will, become aware now of the effortlessness of just sitting here. Letting your body rest, supported by the surface beneath you. And even if you notice effort, see if you can also be aware of the effortlessness. And let yourself be aware now of the effortlessness of breath breathing you. And one caveat with this instruction or invitation, if any of you are experiencing the symptoms of COVID-19 and breathing is more challenging, just see if you can be aware of your body resting, the invitation of effortlessness, even while there is also effort. Notice if there are any subtle shifts or changes that you want to make in your posture to allow for even more of a sense of resting. And we can acknowledge that physical comfort in meditation, an easeful posture is important so that we can invite the mind to begin to settle, the body to begin to settle. This is a settling into stillness. We're allowing our awareness through stillness to expand organically. Being with life, moment by moment. Softening, being with what is. We're resting into the stillness that can hold everything. Acknowledging that the inner landscape and outer landscape contain all of life, every season, every texture, every color, every mood, every sensation. And in that field of everything, there is nothing to push away. Nothing to turn away from, nothing to cling to or strive for. Being intimate with life, being with life as it is. Remembering the refuge of the stillness that can hold it all. See if, as you meditate today, you can allow for a feeling of being held by stillness. Consciously allowing whatever reveals itself to you in the mirror of stillness today to be here. There's certainly a physical element to the stillness we remember in meditation, but it's much greater than that. The energetic stillness, the bright, vast field of awareness that is always illuminating us. So just notice as you meditate today, anytime there is efforting or physical holding, to invite a softening, letting go. And you allow yourself to let it all go. Beyond the mind, beyond that which we think we know. Beyond this habit of identifying as a separate self, me and my bubble. Beyond the mind's attachment to limitation, which keeps ego feeling safe, who is the vastness of who you really are. Can you let yourself relax into all possibility? And I want to emphasize that there is nothing you need to do. It's more of a softening, a settling, an emptying, or surrendering. All you need to do is to be with what is unfolding moment by moment. Remember the simplicity of the one breath meditation I offered at the start. Letting whatever arises in our meditation practice, both in sitting meditation and in life, as a teacher. And the teacher is asking you, how can I meet this too with complete openness, with love. So just notice where your attention is right now. And if you've wandered off, gently but firmly bring your focus back to this moment. Just resting here. Being with what is. Beyond the cognitive mind and beyond our habits of identifying with limiting assumptions, identifying with ego, there is an innate relational intelligence that each and every one of us carries, and in fact is the intelligence that can meet life moment by moment with love, kindness, welcome. This applies to how we meet ourselves, how we meet one another, how we meet our world, not as separate, free from the myth of separation. Please allow your breath now to deepen. Again, bring awareness to your physical body and just notice the weather of your body in this moment. And if there's any muscles that you want to invite to relax just a little more. Notice if there's any way that you might invite even more settledness and openness as an energetic state. And once again, let's turn our attention to sound, eyes still resting. Acknowledging that listening itself is a meditation. A bridge to the consciousness that illuminates you, so much more vast and interconnected than the conditioned mind. inclusive, though, of the conditioned mind, not rejecting. So in a moment, we'll bring our meditation to a close and we'll open the field for questions and inquiries, but to really set the intention now to just stay resting here in the energetic of openness, listening. And let's all take in together now one more deep breath, breathing in deeply, exhaling fully. So welcome, everyone. In this fresh moment, on this new day of practicing together and coming together from so many different places, I want to invite you to write your questions in the Q&A. And while you're sitting with what those questions might be today, the encouragement that all questions are welcome. There might be questions very personal to things you are practicing with right now or edges that you're being asked to meet. There might be questions that are clearly for the collective. There might be insights that you've been having through your practice that you want me to speak a little bit more about. And I think I'll pause and just invite awareness about a few deepening practice opportunities that I have coming up so I can voice them now and then make myself fully available for your inquiries. The first thing I'll mention is that May 19th through 22nd, we're having a meditation and mindfulness summit through the Shift Network that I've co-hosted, and the link is up on my website, and this is free, and it's an incredible opportunity to hear interviews by me and my co-host with some of our favorite teachers and colleagues in this field on topics that we feel are vital medicine for this time. And it's something I'm really excited about. I've so deeply enjoyed the interview process, and there's also a really fabulous interview about what's current in my work. So to just save those dates and know that those resources will be available for free. And also, there are a couple of offerings the weekend of May 22nd. There's a 2-day retreat I'm co-teaching on rewiring for joy. And it's a really significant and unique offering with a colleague named Amma Tanasanti, both exploring what true joy is and exploring how we access it in the full range of states we meet as human beings, from well-being and ease to through working with trauma and the state of limbic system trigger. And the following weekend beyond that, there's another I think it's a 3-hour retreat offered by the Young Center on reawakening to joy in extraordinary times. So save those dates and join me. I'm going to go ahead and look in the chat box now and maybe invite Sarah or Lauren to read questions for the group.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the first one is, can you speak more on how to not react to the conditioned mindset?
Mm-hmm. This really is the foundation of having a practice. It begins with learning to pay attention much more subtly and in a committed way. Some of you have heard me describe deep listening as the alternative to shallow listening. And shallow listening can be when we're just kind of up in our heads, which, by the way, is a very popular form of non-embodiment in today's world. And we're listening kind of like glued to the radio show of our conditioned mind. We're believing every thought. We're just reacting from those thoughts. We're kind of up here. It's incredibly limited. And deep listening invites us to drop down and settle into the moment, into our bodies more fully, to listen from presence, where we can certainly be aware of this conditioned mind, the replay of our thoughts and reactions, but we have access to a much deeper resource as well. We have awareness of the choice that's available in every moment to notice our thoughts without abiding by them or identifying with each of them. You are so much more than your thoughts. If you slow down and just notice a thought arise and pass, if you do not engage with that thought, in other words, hop on the thought train, which leads from one thought to the next, to your reaction to that one, to that one, to that one, there you go. You'll notice that the thought dissolves. It arises and then it passes. And then there's space. Everything in practice is about allowing extra space, beginning to notice more. It's there, you're just not used to noticing it. You haven't been taught its phenomenal value, the value of noticing the space between your thoughts, the space between each breath, the space that is the backdrop of every moment. It's space, empty space, from which everything arises and everything returns. So that's our resource. This space, the spaciousness is consciousness itself. It's the consciousness that illuminates you. So it's also who you really are. But we spend a lot of time identifying with the reactive mind, thinking that's who I am. So it takes practice. And it's also important to bring kindness in here. When we notice that we act out of reactivity, that we get caught in that, we practice not judging ourselves. Just seeing, oh yeah, you've been doing that for a really long time. To be honest, you've been doing it for a long time, and it's probably some form of reactivity that you are experiencing that has been acted out through your DNA, through generations upon generations, starting with your ancestors. So this might be some old stuff. So let's be patient and kind with ourselves, but committed to go to what is beyond it. Okay? We are so much more than our minds. This practice takes us far beyond the cognitive mind, the conditioned mind. That's where all of this occurs. So great question. And I hope that's encouraging. Yeah.
There
How about the next one?
a couple questions on the logistics of your events and how to register and whether or not you'll be sending an email with information or just how to access.
Okay. Anyone who would like to receive notifications for things, and sometimes things are scheduled just a week in advance because the moment arises, the inner guidance arises, and we schedule it. It's really could be good to either join me on Instagram. That's a really good way to keep track of things, or sign up for my mailing list. I just send out a newsletter maybe twice a month. One will be going out shortly. So you can see that easily on my website. And for these particular events, the May 22nd weekend, you go to my website, but it's 1440 that does the registration. The weekend after, you access that through the Young Center. So all the links are there. Okay. And everyone is being really mindful of the fact that some people have their income right now and some people don't. So there's a great range of accessibility financially. Okay. Yeah. And there's also a bigger program that we've just offered registration for, something that is near and dear to my heart, the 6-month Heart of Listening immersion program. And that begins in September. And I think I might speak more about that later. But I want to make sure we get to people's questions today.
So the next is, when I meditate, I always close my eyes. At times I see the color blue and it is like a curtain rising and the color blue lightens and then there is a solid blue. It happens when my mind isn't wandering. Is this uncommon?
No, it's not uncommon, and we have all kinds of different experiences in meditation. And as we practice, some of us notice there's more potential distraction or interesting things arising on the level of body and sensory experience, sensation, or pain. For some people, it's more mental stuff, and how do I work with this? And for some people, it's more emotional. So to welcome it all, one encouragement is, as we soften our eyes in meditation, we're resting from the visual field. It's a little easier to maintain our sense of I through the habit pattern of visual, familiar orientation. When we soften, it does allow, softening our eyes, a bit more of an opening to the orifice of our other senses and larger perceptions. So to not give too much emphasis to even what you're seeing in your eyes with them closed, to be aware of a more open awareness and allowing your awareness to expand with each breath you take. So you can notice that. But anytime we get pulled in or distracted by something, just let it go, aware of that too, and drop in more to presence. Great question. Yeah.
The next is, I'm dealing with an illness that's changing my appearance. I'm having a very hard time not being sad or judging the change. Can you speak to the problem and how I can relate to an appearance that I don't want with compassion?
Sure. Yeah. Let's all pause and take in a deep breath. Just noticing with this question and any question that gets asked, what it hits in you personally and how you feel for and with that question, what it touches on for you personally. And first, so much compassion for this question, because this is an example where, number one, something happens in illness and there's a real awareness of, gosh, I don't have any control here. Something that maybe I thought I could rely on or had some control over, how I appear or whatever it is, completely gone. So we're left to either suffer over that, judge that, feel broken by that, or meet that as our practice opportunity to really meet that with loving presence. And we'll talk about how to do that. This is a great example because, let's face it, folks, we are an appearance-obsessed culture. And when I say that, I'm talking about the dominant paradigm. Let me just make one adjustment on my screen. And I can speak from personal experience very much and share that, because for over a decade I worked with Lyme. I really got to have direct experience of how, with Lyme coming in and taking me on this ride, which meant sometimes flare-ups, and I would be completely not able to meet any of the, maybe you would say, condition standards I had for myself on any level. Plus I would be in a tremendous amount of pain, a foreign body, just completely foreign. And then times when that would drop. It was a fabulous teacher in getting to see where I was attached to conditional versus unconditional love, and to access my inner, because deep inside it is who we all are, and it is what we are all craving, the freedom of unconditional unconditional love. And what that means is beyond the notions of I'm lovable when I have this kind of energy, I'm lovable when I show up this way, I'm lovable when I look this way, I'm lovable when I can produce this particular way. Lovable based on these this meeting of standards, which connects with, so therefore I'm unlovable, all these other ways. We're really asked in practice, we are invited to drop it, to drop that completely. And it's not even that we have to learn or access the love that can meet all of it. It's that we can remember that deeper place inside of us. Now, I'm going to say that personally, what I became aware when I was working with illness was, gosh, there are some places where my ego is holding on really firmly, really strongly, and saying, I don't want to let go of this particular standard. I don't want to let go of conditional love here. I don't want to let go of battling myself here. Meaning places that my ego was bent on maintaining the story that I'm okay in certain states or appearances or whatever, and not lovable in others. If we're doing that within ourselves, we are doing it to all of humanity. More importantly, we are maintaining a trance of conditional love, a trance of separation that is actually delusional. It's not innate to be seen through a lens of hierarchy, this versus that. So, 2 things for you. Number 1, please bring so much care to the part of yourself that is really disappointed, really struggling, really experiencing loss. There's so much in learning to be with, turn towards, and let ourselves fully feel our hurt and our disappointment and loss. And in turning towards and being with it, we do access a deeper resilience and a deeper love. As an example, I can't tell you how many times in my practice with illness, I would have no energy, okay, and be feeling so much sadness and disappointment. And in turning towards, rather than away from that, and really being with it, I would receive the nourishment of a boundless energy from where it came, I do not know, from spirit that is much bigger than what we can access through the lens of separation or hierarchical perception. And I'll also just share that, there's something really powerful about the invitation practice offers to learn to trust life and to learn to trust our innate beauty, our innate goodness, beyond the made-up conditioned standards, which, by the way, when you're talking about beauty, are different in every single culture on the planet, so they're all made up. Beyond all of that, because if we are abiding by that, we're having our attention constantly out here to what are those standards, and a conversation up here, am I meeting them? So I feel for you, and I relate. I can't tell you how much that has been a part of my path. And you know what's beautiful about it? Some of you have heard me talk about humility. It's the most powerful place I know to rest as a human being. And it's a place that takes us completely beyond self-aggrandizement, but also completely beyond self-deprecation. It takes us beyond a fixation with the self, me, and how am I doing, and am I good enough, and wow, do you know how much energy would be freed up in your entire being if you dropped that conversation? I promise, a tremendous amount of life force and vitality. So I appreciate that question. Yeah.
Someone else said, great question, me too, or dealing with this as well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
The next question is, can you speak about clairvoyance and being able to distinguish true intuition and insights versus distracting thoughts or paranoia? Can true insights only come through deep meditation?
Sure. First, I would say that there is an article that I wrote with a friend named Jennifer Freed up on my website. It was posted in Goop last year, and it's about the difference between intuition and urgency. A lot of times there can be a misunderstanding. It has to do with some attachment that we might have to superstition, to the mind of fear, so that information arises and we think, oh, I had a dream about this and this was true intuition and I need to act on this. And we go into story about it. And it's really different than the clear, not layered with anything our mind has placed on top of it. Guidance, information, intuition, insight that we receive through presence. Insight, intuition can come to us in a million ways. I received a powerful and insight in my dream last night that has informed me afresh, anew today. We receive insight all the time and intuition all the time when we are just present. And I talk about this in my book, Relational Mindfulness, because part of what we're remembering, when we soften how solidly we're listening to this and devotedly we're listening to the conditioned mind, that's what I mean by this motion, and believing it and acting on it, whole other fields of perception are open and become more available to us. The first guidance that I received from one of my great teachers of this lifetime, he was a clairvoyant himself, and he invited me to consider that until I allowed my mind, and specifically my seventh chakra, but to empty, to start releasing more of the beliefs I was clinging to, the assumptions about myself, others, the world that I was not questioning. There just wasn't enough room, enough space to really open to a much larger field of perception that we all have the capacity for. That's an expression of relational intelligence. And that was my experience when I began to question and soften the busyness, the certainty of these conditioned beliefs. There is so much more information, clear seeing, available to me. That said, I also want to emphasize that it's really helpful to also not romanticize or have an attachment to the special exotic experiences of clairvoyance that we might have, or receiving communication from other realms. Let all of that arise. Let it be part of your life if it is, but no need to fetishize it. Yeah. Let's ground ourselves in the sacred, profound nature of ordinary, everyday experience, and also open ourselves up to awareness that the human realm is not the only realm, and that the cognitive mind is certainly not our only portal for communication, yeah, for understanding. So that's a great question. Yeah.
The next question is, I'm finding some confusion when it comes to my ego lately. Last night I was feeling some pride after knowing I helped someone and luxuriated in the glow, but then I suddenly felt guilty for feeling that way. As I struggle with depression, it's sometimes difficult to navigate my ego and to allow myself to feel happy and proud of myself. I don't think I'm allowed to be proud because it means I'm egotistical, which is, quote, bad. Any thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You know, everyone is working with their own ego. Um, I'll start by just sharing, I know how my ego operates really, really well by now. I know so much more than I knew 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And in a recent interaction and organization I was invited to do a project with, in the mirror of that relational dynamic, I got to see something in myself I hadn't seen fully. And I absolutely love, love, love the process of discovery that this practice is. So I'm going to pause and just tangent for a minute, and then I'll come back to your question. I sometimes describe it as, we're not, what we're going for in practice is the ever emerging courage, moment by moment, that comes from being lit up by the process of discovery. Okay. And discovery, of course, requires a great deal of slowing down and receptivity and paying attention, rather than the kind of courage or strength that we think of comes from force or striving or getting there or attaining, getting enlightened fast, that kind of thing. So it's not force. It's really being moved by the spirit of discovery. And back to your specific question, earlier when I was talking about humility as the place, because sometimes people think of humility as, oh, dampen down your ego, get smaller, okay? Don't be too big or too proud of yourself or too loud. I described it differently. It's the place that goes both beyond self-aggrandizement and completely beyond self-deprecation. It's a quality of acceptance within our own beings and relaxation in knowing who we really are, the vastness of true nature. Just so much more than this self who's wondering, did I get approval? I got approval. Am I doing good enough? I'm doing great. Did I make the mark? I made the mark. It's just a much bigger place. So along the way, a couple encouragements are, number one, let's acknowledge that we all have a lot of different parts inside. And we always want to have the relationship like a compassionate mentor, okay, a friend, to all the different aspects of our being. So I'm going to give a personal example. Recently I'm about to meet a deadline. And this was something that this particular deadline, this project, brought up some fears for me. I was like, this is a growing edge for me. And so I really appreciated myself as I'm coming near the end of it. I've completely met it with courage, with presence. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I've grown. But it's also had that feeling of like, wow, I really said yes to something that grew me. And so, of course, I'm appreciating myself. Of course, I am loving myself up and just really appreciating the courage and the willingness of myself to grow. Nothing wrong with that. No reason to, I think you said that you were feeling guilt around appreciating yourself or feeling good about something. That said, some of you have heard me give the teaching, the encouragement, no previews and no reviews. We can let ourselves receive the joy, the satisfaction in our bones of showing up well to something, showing up wholeheartedly, letting our light shine, okay? But if we get caught in that place of continually either reviewing as positive or negative what we've done or what we might do, we are affirming the bubble of separate self. Yeah, we are affirming, going back to what I shared earlier, the delusion of conditional love, that's what makes you lovable. Okay? So one more thing I'll say is just that, because humility kind of points to the conversation about how big we're letting ourselves be, I just want to offer that when you drop it, the more you let ego or separate self dissolve and you let life move through you and you let presence and the field of interconnection, a larger sense, larger experience of who you are, move you through life, your expression will become so much larger than you could ever imagine, so much more powerful than your ego could ever try to do or be. But you won't have much going on about it. You really won't. That's freedom. So just an encouragement, And I do really appreciate your question and your willingness for me to go off on a couple tangents around that. Yeah. Let's all pause for a minute. Just taking a breath. Just feeling the air as it enters you and fills you and releases. And I see 2 more questions. So let's move into these final questions.
Eden, I'm wondering if I could read you both at the same time because I have to hop right at noon.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The first is, how does one deal with a panic attack? Is it best to have practiced self-compassion before the onset? How does one deal with the long-term processes of aging and the loss of strength and youthful attributes? First question. And the second is, I am having a hard time processing the constant changes and movement in my life. In this pandemic, I'm growing and not feeling as anxious, but I'm noticing a lot of tension in my body. I've gotten a lot out of your responses so far. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about youth and loss of youth. Let's talk about panic attacks, and let's talk about change, navigating change in the unknown. First, again, so much compassion for all of these questions. Because we have all been conditioned by a society focused on conditional love. And I want to pause and acknowledge that conditional love is an expression of violence. I want to emphasize that. Conditional love is an expression of violence. And if it's what you want to settle for in your life, maybe you've settled for it for so long that you don't believe there's an alternative. That's fine, but it leaves out 1/2 of all of nature. Therefore, it leaves out 1/2 of all of yourself. That's not wholeness. And that's not fair. Through the stories of conditional love, and quite honestly, this goes back to our conversation about appearance, with such a focus on this sort of technology-based society, this vision of progress, there's even more of a perpetuation of some of the limiting messages that hold duality, that say youth is so much more valued than old age. Beauty is valued and it looks only this way, but not this way. High energy is valued, but not low energy. Productivity is valued, but not rest and restoration, which, by the way, all of nature models is a necessity for life to thrive, okay? We have all of these bizarre distortions. And when we've internalized those, then when we're meeting the natural cycles of our life, there can be a lot of story layered on top of it. Gosh, now I have less energy. What's wrong with me? An even heartache around it. Wow, what a problem. Gosh, I don't look the way that I've looked in the past and been valued for. So now all is lost. I'm losing some sense of worth, okay? For love of ourselves and for love of life and for interest, if we are interested in ending violence, those dualities have to go. They have to go. They are not useful. They do not serve anything but distortion. We cannot thrive, we cannot survive as a species unless we release these distortions and return to source, return to letting nature guide us. Nature contains all of it. Nature models these cycles of life. The beauty of the fresh flowers, and these flowers are already starting to diminish, the cycle of degeneration. Beginnings and endings, all as sacred. And so I would encourage you to consider this within yourself. And just on a practical level, this is for everyone. Start paying attention to. You can even journal about this day to day. What are little, subtle, seemingly innocent ways that I feed the myth of conditional love every day? Just noticing, what are those subtle ways? Okay. It could be, you notice when you get dressed certain ways, or it could be that you notice work habits or patterns that aren't actually about your authentic pace and honoring your energy, but forcing yourself into a particular standard. Just begin to pay attention with curiosity. It could be about judging yourself when your energy is low. Let's all together get over this bullshit. It's absolute BS. It is not bigger than who you really are. And then there's a way we get to experience life when we let it go and we let life have more room to move through us, to inform us, because there's not a whole bunch of room when we are just focused on our conditioning. That feeds so much joy and so much vitality, and by the way, so much beauty, a beauty that comes from within. Yeah. Let's all go there together. It's really important. It takes courage, folks, but it's really important. We're going to go for a few more minutes. I just want to share the dream I've had last night. It was simply a dream where I was had visited by my true nature, and simply got to experience in this dream. We have a creek in our backyard. It's really a constant gem in my life, sitting out on a rock with my true nature. And my true nature was in the form of just my most ordinary self possible. Most ordinary self possible. I think she was just wearing cut-off jeans and a holy t-shirt, hair unbrushed, smiling cheek to cheek, so happy to be with me, so ordinary, so perfectly imperfect, so of the earth. Folks, there's a lot of distortion to cut through. I would say I never tell people to get busy. I tell them to drop busyness, but if you're going to get busy in anything, get busy dropping distortion. Just letting yourself identify it, see it. You can tell it for how it smells. You can sense conditioned BS quite easily. It's all over the media. And at the same time, I don't want to paint a picture that it's everywhere. True nature is equally everywhere. So just start bringing discernment to the difference and ask yourself, what do I in my heart choose? What, you're going to die one day. What do I want to choose for the time I'm here? And just start rolling from that. Okay, pause. A question around panic attacks, and I'm going to give short answers to these, but these are big questions. Again, to have so much compassion for yourself while you're meeting that experience, and I've heard from more people during this time of disruption experiencing something like a panic attack or anxiety attack, noticing how intensely it overtakes the body, to give yourself permission to have no judgment and to drop as many stories as you can about that experience. What did I do wrong that this is going on? This is going to overtake me. This is going to be here for good. I'm doomed. To drop as much story as you can and to start asking yourself, what does it mean to meet this experience with love? So there was a period number of years ago where I developed a respiratory illness out of the blue. This situation lasted 6 weeks and was one of the most difficult things I've gone through as a human being. And I've gone through a lot. In those 6 weeks, part of what happened was I could not access my breath in any way that was okay with me. And so it started triggering panic. It was just a body response to not getting enough oxygen. And some people choose to reach out and maybe take something during that time that would support you. And I knew it's my personal practice. I didn't want anything that might alter my brain in any way. I'm too sensitive a being. So I chose to meet the experience through meditation. And that meant moment by moment, breath by breath, bringing as much presence and love as I can, which would then calm down my system. I practiced walking meditation more than I ever have in my entire life, because the grounding of feet, breath, and body really helped me to just stay here when those difficult moments would come. My husband, Mark, is a flower essence therapist, and so we practice presence and partnership with nature. So flower essences are a really gentle and powerful way to support your energetic system and emotional body when it needs more support. His website is essencealchemy.com. And that said, if you are in a position where you need to reach out for help and go to talk to a doctor and take something that's going to really calm you down, let that be your conscious choice. No judgment. Do what you need to do, but to be aware of options. All right. And, I'm aware that in a few minutes I need to transition to something else. So I'm giving the most generous short answers I can right now. With the question about really navigating change and the unknown. This is very much about befriending the mystery, being willing to befriend the mystery. Many of you know that I'm writing a book right now about darkness. Darkness as the mystery from which everything arises and everything returns. Darkness as the yin, restorative, still, empty, receptive aspect of nature. The backdrop of consciousness from which every insight arises, every sense of knowing. Sometimes what tends to happen in our world is we're very used to holding on to that which arises from darkness. Insight arises. Now I can hold on to it. A new expression of who I am arises. Now I'm going to hold on to that and be maintaining this idea of an I. We tend to, through fear of darkness and fear of the mystery, instead of letting it guide us and letting ourselves surrender into it and learn to trust, we tend to want to build scaffolding in our life, and then we hold on to the scaffolding for safety, but it's not really safe. It's just a false sense of safety. That scaffolding can look like, this is my career, I'm on this career track, I'm marrying this person and buying that house, having that kid, we're on that track, we've got the scaffolding, whatever it is, and no judgment around this. We like to create scaffolding instead of learning to rest in friendship with the mystery. Friendship with the mystery, letting life create with us and through us. I've created a ton in my life, but I'm not holding on to it as scaffolding, as what keeps me safe. My safety comes from in here. It's learning the place within us in a world where all that arises and passes is ever changing. What is unchanging? What is unchanging? That's the question for everyone to be meditating on, and that is deep within you, and that is the consciousness that illuminates us. And in order to access it and remember it and live from it, we need to soften our fear, ego sphere, because it's not your heart sphere, ego sphere of the mystery. That's it, folks. That's it. So have a lot of compassion for yourself as you do that work, but do that work. Show up for it. This is a practice that requires rolling up your sleeves, and getting in there. Okay? Showing up. One of my favorite Zen sayings is, this is it. This is it. This is the best opportunity you're going to ever have to wake up. This is life. It's now. There is not a someday. So, pausing again, just exhaling together. Really appreciating yourself for your practice today. And a reminder that any of you who are moved and can offer dana, donation, spirit of generosity to my nonprofit for my teaching, it is always met with gratitude and helps me to share these teachings with more people. So as we bring it to a close, just setting the intention to meet this day with full presence. Thank you, everyone.